A landmark ruling in the Delaware Bankruptcy Court throws out the Chapter 11 bankruptcy petition by Baha Mar.
U.S. courts have sided with the Bahamas Supreme Court regarding the bankruptcy filing by Baha Mar. It was the last resort by the company to have its filing upheld. But in his decision, U.S. Judge Kevin Carey decided that the Bahamas should be the jurisdiction that decides what should happen. Clint Watson has been working this story from all angles since the decision was handed down around lunchtime. He's live with us. Clint, what's now the next step for everybody involved?
Well, Chris Charisma, what this in essence means is that the Chapter 11 proceedings for Baha Mar, except for the one American subsidiary company, North Shore, were dismissed. Now, North Shore operates their call center for Baha Mar in the U.S. The judge agreed with Justice Winder that anyone doing business with Baha Mar in the Bahamas would expect that their case, if any, would be heard in the Bahamas. Now, for that reason, he dismissed the ones for the Bahamian company, but any business attached to the American company would be heard in America. Baha Mar stated that it is disappointed that the motions by China State Construction and the Export-Import Bank of China to vacate Baha Mar's Chapter 11 process have been granted by the U.S. court, with the exception of the Chapter 11 case of North Shore Mainland Services. Accordingly, Baha Mar says it will explore its alternatives with respect to the court's decision. Now, Baha Mar stated that with respect to the decision, they note that the court affirmed that it was appropriate for Baha Mar to file for Chapter 11 in the U.S. court and that the Chapter 11 filings were made in good faith. In its ruling, the court made clear that the Chapter 11 process, with all stakeholders participating under these circumstances, would be an ideal vehicle for the restructuring of this family of related companies, with the ultimate goal of finishing a project said to be 97% complete and, upon its exit from Chapter 11, to be in sound financial footing with appropriate treatment of creditors. The court also made the point that if it were convinced that denying the dismissal motions would have the effect desired by the debtors, bringing CCA, China XM, and the government of the Bahamas back to the bargaining table, it might consider denying the dismissal motions. But the evidence does not reflect this, and the judge was not convinced this will happen in short order. Furthermore, in his decision, Judge Carey of the U.S. Court noted it may well be that the North Shore Chapter 11 case could serve as a useful vehicle for the parties as part of an overall resolution of the corporate family's difficulties in concert with the proceedings in the Bahamas. Baha Mar emphasized its priority continues to be ensuring Baha Mar is in a position to be completed properly and opened successfully as soon as possible. They are continuing to do all realistically they can, including working with the provisional liquidators appointed by the Bahamian Supreme Court to try to resolve the issues that have prevented Baha Mar from opening. Well, Prime Minister, the Honorable Perry Christie, says the government welcomes the decision of the Delaware Bankruptcy Court to dismiss the Chapter 11 proceedings against the Bahamian Baha Mar entities.
In so doing, the Bankruptcy Court agreed that the future of the Baha Mar resort should be determined in the proceedings in the Supreme Court of the Bahamas, in which Justice Winder has appointed provisional liquidators. The government's primary objective is and has always been to see the resort completed, opened, and operating as soon as possible. The Delaware Bankruptcy Court's decision advances that objective and recognizes that the interests of the Bahamian Baha Mar entities and their creditors will be best served by the Bahamian proceedings and by negotiations. The government therefore invites all parties to join it in cooperating with the provisional liquidators to bring about a prompt resolution of this matter in the interests of the Bahamian people.
Prime Minister Christie there. Well, a short time ago, the Joint Provisional Liquidators also released a statement on the ruling, saying the decision today would not change their role, which is to protect and preserve Baha Mar's assets and focus on bringing all parties to the table so the resort can open. Managing Director of Chris Global, Edmund Ramming, said they are focused on their court-appointed obligations rather than on proceedings outside their control. The Joint Provisional Liquidators have called their task of sorting through thousands of pages of documents, contracts, and communications accumulated over the last decade massive, and said the Delaware judge's ruling would not impact their strategy, obligations, or goal as assigned by the Bahamian court. Now, Ramming says they have been well supported in their efforts so far to the cooperation of the parties involved, and they hope it continues as there are still many routes to be explored. Now, Chris and Charisma, what's key is, again, Judge Carey agreed with Justice Winder that the matter should have a negotiated solution rather than litigation. That's something we've been hearing all along in this process. Well, live in the newsroom, I'm Clint Watson.